This will be more of a tutorial how to create artwork in Unity. Alright, let's get into it. You can create illustrations using Paint, GIMP or Photoshop. There are hundreds of programs to create images though. For this instance we will use GIMP as it's a free tool and allows us to export PNGs. In most programs you want to export the images so they show the checkerboard background to get transparency. Import the texture by drag and drop it into the project view. Change the texture type to sprite. As this texture has several sprites, change sprite mode to multiple. Go down to compression quality and set it to none. Don't forget to apply the changes. Now go ahead and press the sprite editor button. Here you can define how each sprite look like. There's two ways. First you can make selections, but this is a more tedious way. The second option is to use the slice feature. You can either use the automatic or you can use grid by cell size. And in this case I have made sure that every cell is 256 times 512. Press apply to save your changes. Drag and drop one of the sprites into the hierarchy view. For organization purposes, I usually create an empty game object that I will parent above the sprite. Now you can position, rotate and scale the empty game object so the character fits into the scene. Make sure the sprite position is 0, 0, 0 and rotation is 0, 0, 0 and scale is 1, 1, 1. Notice that I'm only adjusting the empty game object rather than the sprite. Now browse to Windows, Animation and select Animation. This is your animation tool in Unity, which is super powerful. Press the Create button, name the animation. Now we are inside an animation file, and we are free to add sprites in a timeline. If you want to achieve a looping animation, make sure to duplicate the last frame, otherwise it won't show. It is also worth mentioning that you can animate almost any values using the animation tool. Sprite color, scale and even material parameters. Really take advantage of this tool as you can move almost anything.
Exciting!
I will go through how to add different animations into one game object. I will start by creating another animation. I want this animation to play and then go back to the normal dance animation. Now that I have both assets finished, go to Window, Animation and Animator. Make sure to select the game object with the Animator component. If you right click on the animation nodes, you have a few options. The orange highlighted node will always be the first animation that plays during startup, unless you change it by selecting Set as Layer Default State. My goal is to make the new dance pose animation appear during a specific part. Right click on the Any State node and click Make Transition. Now drag the transition arrow to the animation you want to start. Go to the Parameter tab and click on the plus icon and select Trigger. Now select the transition line. Here you have a bunch of options, but most importantly is the conditions at the bottom. Press the plus icon and select the trigger you just made. For most animations, I recommend just turning off all the options and setting everything to 0. Now add a transition line between the new pose animation and the original looping one. Make sure has exit time is set to true and set the exit time to around 0.98. And set everything else to 0 and turn off all ticks. Now let's try it out. You can see whenever I tick the trigger, the character does the animation, and you can see how the animator flowchart is visualizing the system. It is this trigger value we want to call during event triggers using notes or sections. So for example, if you want the animation to play every time note ID 0 is played, press the Add Component event, go to Animator, Set Trigger. Then simply drag the game object with the animator component into the animator slot and write the trigger name. Now every time a note is being called, the animation will trigger. The particle system is an immensely powerful tool and very easy to use. We'll be going through how to create an impact effect and a spraying looping effect. First, right-click the hierarchy view, go into Effects and select Particle System. Here we already have a particle system which sprays out several particles. Let's turn it into an exciting spray of stars. I have already prepared a star texture, but you need a material to apply to the particle system. Right-click in the project view, go into Create and select Material. Inside the material, I recommend choosing a particle shader. Now assign the texture into a material. The texture has transparent parts, so change the rendering mode to fade and then drag and drop it into the particle system. This part of the work is more artistic and is just a matter of personal taste. So first I'll adjust the gravity modifier and set it to 1. And now I have to increase the speed of all the particles. I felt that the origin point of the radius needed to be tightened and increase the emission of particles. Be wary of using too many particles, as they are usually quite heavy in performance, especially if they are overlapping. Here I decrease the lifetime of each particle. To be able to modify the color of the particles, you need to make sure that the shader is set to particle, at least connected to vertex colors somehow. And that should give you a hint of how to use particle systems. I also want to showcase how to make an impact effect, as it showcases a lot of attributes in the particle tools. Here I changed the emission to a burst type, so all the particles appears at the same time rather than rate of time. The limit velocity over lifetime component is very useful for explosions and sparks, as it slows down the particles. Make sure to use random between two constants at almost all time, because it gives so much more life into all the effects. Now this should have given you quite some information on how to handle art in Unity. There is still a million of things I want to explain, but I will quickly just show how to get post-processing work on your battle. Open up Package Manager and in the Unity registry, search for post-processing and make sure to download 2.1.5. Once installed, you have to drag and drop the custom camera prefab. I recommend downloading the Sans battle how we set up to animate the post-process volumes. You can find it in the Discord channel, inside resources. Overall, following other Unity tutorials about the subjects is going to help you immensely. I hope you found this tutorial useful for your modding adventures.